Welcome back to the Rebuild Construction Mindset podcast. We are your host. I am Jenna Hamilton, and I have my wonderful co-host here, Kelley Huss, with us. We drop new episodes every other Monday. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and anywhere else you see us. Please share as much as you can. So I'm going to let Kelley introduce our amazing guest today. She has a little bit of a connection to this one, so I'll let Kelley go ahead.
All right, thanks, Jenna. Today we have Becky Larrison, and she's special because she's my mom.
Woo!
Yay! So, yes, I'm just going to say mom from this point on because otherwise it's going to be super weird to say Becky.
That's fair.
For me. So just on a weird thing for me. But my mom, Becky, has been a building inspector for 31 years and even started out a little in the trades very early on. And so with March being Women in Construction Month, we wanted to get some perspective, someone that's been around a little longer in the industry, and we haven't had a building inspector on yet. And I think that would be a really interesting perspective from what I was told growing up on the building inspector. I went to the dark side, to the construction side, from living in the building department. But, I know all of us people on the construction side think inspectors are so mean, right?
Evil. They think we're evil.
So, Mom, if you want to go ahead and maybe just give a history of where you started and how you came to become a building inspector.
Well, it was kind of a fluke, really. My dad was a roofer and shingler by trade and worked out of San Diego, California. And I was going to college, Whittier, and then San Diego State at some point. I have a degree in recreation management. And so I was in college from 71 to 76. So, you always look for summer jobs. Well, one summer, my dad said, would you like to go out and roof with me? And I went, well, can I? Because, there was no women in construction of any sort anywhere. And he goes, yeah. And so he talked to his employer, a roofing company out of Oceanside, and they agreed. And there was an apprentice program out of the San Diego Carpenters Union down in downtown San Diego. And I think I found the local number even, which is it was local 619 Carpenters Union. And my dad and I went down there. Went into this Carpenters Union Hall, and there were a few men here and there, basically just men, sitting around and stuff. My dad went to sign me up as an apprentice, and they said no. And my dad goes, she's got a job. We had a letter from them. And they go, she qualifies. She's my daughter. She, you let us bring our sons in. And they still did not want to. They go, we got guys that are unemployed and need to go to work. This was 1973. And they finally went ahead and signed me up because my dad demanded it. And like you said, we had a company that stated that she has a job. That company was the wife of the guy that owned this roofing company, was part of the company, and she really pushed for this. So that probably kind of helped also. But so that's how I started. I started as a shingler, and we did wood shingles and shakes, basically. I did that off and on for the next few years while I was going to college. And my dad always told me, he goes, now it's just a bunch of men out there, so be aware. You're going to hear things. You're probably going to see things. You're going to probably there's going to be, mention of, me being a woman out there. And there was a lot of that. And I just kind of, whatever, I'm out here to do the job. And I did. When I graduated from college, I couldn't find a decent job in recreation management. So I was real close to be getting my journeyman status as a roofer. So I went back to roofing with my dad and a guy that he worked with that was an apprentice and finishing up his apprenticeship. So he and I basically teamed up together. His name was Michael, and he and I finished our apprenticeship under my dad, and we both became journeymen, and we traveled around together for a couple of years doing roofing, shingling, and shingle siding. And I'll never forget the one foreman that had us working together stated, I wish I could put the two of you as one person, because Michael was fast, but I did a really nice job. I was meticulous about how things should look. So that was how I got started in the roofing. In the meantime, I was trying to get a job with the U.S. Forest Service to get into their recreation, like maybe something to do with their recreation. Well, I got a job as a firefighter. And that was in 1979. 78. The Forest Service was on a push to get a woman in most of their crews. They were being mandated to get women more firefighters. So I got hired, and I had some connections with the Forest Service. My uncle worked for the Forest Service, and so I was able to get a job. I got to be on one of the elite type of things, which was a helitack crew. Usually you had to be with the Forest Service for a couple years before they'd let you do that. And because I was college educated, they figured I would know how to figure loads and stuff like that with a calculator, and because you have to do that with a helicopter. And so that's how I ended up in the Forest Service. And I did that for 2 seasons. As one season was ending, there was a job in Palm Springs, and I lived up in the mountains above in a place called Idlewild, and they were looking for a temporary roofing inspector. And I thought, oh, that would be great during the off season. And so I went and applied for it, and I got the job. And it was temporary because it wasn't fully funded. And so when they did their budget the following year, it became a fully funded position. And so I became full-time for them completely. And so that's how I end up 31 years later retiring as a building inspector. So I don't know.
Where did you find the union number? How did you remember what union you were? Where did you find that?
For some reason, I somewhat remembered it, but I wasn't positive. So I did some research on Carpenters Union because it had gone belly up at one point. And so I had done a little research on the unions in San Diego and the Carpenters Union, and I found it. And so that's how I found that out. And I found out some interesting history about all that too. So it was kind of like, I heard one of the guys talking about the brotherhood, how the unions, the brotherhood. And that's what it was. It was a brotherhood. And I didn't realize how they segregated the union. Not only, you hardly ever had a woman in any of that. I was probably one of the first women in that union, period. They even had separate halls for the white guys and the black guys. And I did not know that. I don't know where women fell, but there weren't any women. I mean, on a job site, I never saw any women. I mean, it was like there was an electrician. When I first started, there was an older electrician working on this project. He had his wife with him that helped him. Now, was she in a union or anything? No, she was there helping her husband. So you just didn't see women in construction. And that was in the 70s. And I mean, even as a building inspector, the roofing companies, when I first started with Palm Springs as an inspector, there were lots of conflicts and about how can she climb up on these roofs and do this, and I showed them that I could, and I just did my job, and it was always some of the old school type of owners were kind of they weren't real sure about having a woman out there doing inspecting. And I learned one thing I got from college was a lot of my psychology classes and how to work with a lot of different people. And I must say my college education did really help me deal with a lot of different types of people. And I mean, I was in a man's world dealing with old school thinking, ways, you name it. I mean, it was I made a lot of I surprised a lot of people when I showed up on a job. And then even, as they started having me, I learned how to do all kinds of inspections, and I did additional schooling and got my certifications in some different types of things. And I was so I was doing all sorts of inspections after a few years, swimming pools, block walls, and then small residential remodel type thing, where I finally was doing full tracts of homes, office buildings, Home Depot building, Walmart. I mean, commercial buildings, hotel even brand new hotel buildings. So I did the realm of quite a few different types of things. And even all through those years, still having a woman come out on the job as an inspector, you always got kind of like different comments and looks and whatever. And I just learned that I needed to earn. One thing I think I always told Kelley, sometimes as a woman, you got to work a little harder to earn their respect. And I did. And you just had to go a little bit further than maybe a man would need to earn the respect of some of those people that were out there.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. I mean, the fact that you started in the trades, not even like starting in the construction management side of it,
No,
is amazing. Especially because like you were saying, I mean, the 70s, there wasn't any women really. So for the fact that you started in the trades as a roofer, of like all the things, I feel like one of the most dangerous jobs. That is amazing. So what do you think? I mean, because how long were you in the industry? You said 31 years?
Well, that's just 31 years as a building inspector for the city of Palm Springs. Because I started with them in the fall of 1979. Okay. And then I retired June of 2010. And I was actually out in the field as an inspector for, I'm going to say, probably close to 20, 25 years of that time. I came in the office as a plans examiner for a while. I did plans examining and did that for a couple years. At one point, they wanted a supervisor for the in-house staff, and they wanted a supervisor for the all the inspectors, and they asked me if I would come in and be the supervisor. They still call me a building inspector supervisor, but supervisor for the in-house staff. I was also in charge of building inspectors, as was the other supervisor. So I did that for a couple years. I probably, if I didn't do that, I probably would have stayed out in the field longer and may not have retired as soon as I did.
Mm-hmm.
I did not enjoy being inside. It was like I'd always been outside. I enjoy being outside. And so my boss at that time, the last few years, he was going through throat cancer. And so I kind of helped him during meetings and because his speech was so, and so I would sit there and tell people what he was trying to say and stuff like that. At some point when he died, they asked me if I would take over the building official, and I declined because I wasn't into there's a lot of politics and dealing with city council, and I knew I was getting really close to making that decision to retire. I stayed one extra year just because he had died, and I wanted to help the office kind of get through things. So, but I did that for 31 years.
Wow. So do you think, I mean, from the very beginning of your first experience, like on a job site until the day that you retired, would you say there was a shift in the way that women were treated, or did you see any kind of shifts as you were going through your time?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Even just as a when I was roofing with my dad, a lot of times, you're just off on your own anyways, roofing, and, you get sent to a job or a track, and you were kind of off on your own, and being up on the roof, the guys that are down below it doesn't really, they don't see you or they're busy with their own thing. And so, there were times with cat calls and stuff like that. But that was in the 70s. And well, it didn't help that I think my first summer we worked along a coastal thing, Del Mar, and on a track, and I wore my bathing suit top with shorts up on the roof, and my dad was always shirtless, and unless somebody from the union came around, then we'd had to put certain things on and make sure we're, the union, because we were part of the union, and you have to wear certain things, whatever. But, but now as an inspector, I was the only woman inspector for many, many years in the Coachella Valley, there where I was. There was no women inspectors in any of the other cities. None. I was elected the year I was pregnant with Kelley, so 1982. I was elected the president of the International Conference of Building Officials for the Coachella Valley chapter. And and I think now they call it the ICC, International, construction. I don't remember what they call it now. ICC, I think. But so I did that, and I think I started seeing a few more women coming into plan checking, working the permit counters. I know we tried to get we had a real smart young woman that worked our permit counter. She started off as a secretary, and then she started working our permit counter, and her name was Angela LaFrance, and she was outstanding. I mean, outstanding. And so we started taking her out and teaching her a few things as a building inspector. Now, she never became a building inspector, but she got her certifications but she ran the permit counter, and I mean, she was great, and she did plan checking. So, so we did do some stuff in-house with a few people, but you just didn't see, I mean, there just weren't very many women in inspections. And I can't even remember seeing very many women per se in construction till, I'm going to say, later 80s, early 90s, where I actually saw women, a few women, like not necessarily contractors, but carpenters, a few. I remember I think in the 90s on one of the tracks I was on, there was a young woman that was apprenticing as an electrician. So I started seeing more as the years went by, but it was quite a while. I mean, quite a while.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. It's just cool to me that the women that you are seeing are in the trades. They weren't, superintendents or project managers or, that kind of thing. So that's super cool that's where women started out, it sounds like, more.
Yeah, and I can't remember ever having any women, even my last years, that were project managers.
Wow.
There just weren't any.
Yeah.
Do you think that has to do with also the location, though? I mean, it's not like Palm Springs is some like big metropolis city area.
I'm
Maybe
sure.
that's also some of the reasons just for that.
Yeah, I'm sure that is. I mean, even though the whole Coachella Valley was growing, and there were a lot going on, tracks, a lot of the big box stores started coming in, but there were no women that were project managers. They're just superintendents, no superintendents. There's, assistant staff,
Mm-hmm.
but not, when I met anybody at a job site and got plans out and stuff, it was just me and usually a man.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Why do you think, I'll just use grandpa because we're just going. This is my family at this point. Hold on.
She's talking grandbaby.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Obviously you were the oldest in general, but why do you think grandpa thought like that would be for you to join like the union and be a roofer? Like, did he just think you had the skills to do it? Did he think you had the mindset to do it? Like, why do you think he went, hey, you should come and do this?
I think he knew I had the mindset for something like this. I always enjoyed being outdoors. He knew I liked to be outdoors. And we always, talked about being out doing stuff, camping, whatever. And so he knew I had the mindset for that, and that I wasn't afraid to try anything. I mean, I was working my way through college on my own. I mean, being the oldest of 12 kids, my mindset was I needed to do better for myself, and I worked hard at it. And so he knew I would be able to do it and handle whatever may happen out in the job site, be it, just like when we went into the union hall and they're saying no, and we're standing there going, well, we've got a job, so, I think he just felt that I could do it. I mean, and even when I came back to it, when I graduated from college, the foreman for the company that he was working for at that time, the foreman didn't want to hire me. He didn't want to hire me, but I was a carded apprentice with the carpenters union, and there's no reason he shouldn't be hiring me. And the wife, and because this was the same company, the wife, she was, very hands-on with her husband's company. And she said, nope, she's working for us. If she wants to come back and work for us, she's coming back to work for us. And he's the same foreman that later on he wished that he could put Mike and I together somehow, where we were one, that we were both fast and good, So I wasn't the fastest. And see, back then, not many people know, but a lot of trades, it was piecework. You got paid by piece. So as a roofer, as a shingler, we got paid piecework. So if I only did
like tiny ass shingles, like I'm thinking like a sheet of drywall, like how many shingles are you got to put up to get paid well?
Well, we went by the bundles, and that's why whenever you opened a bundle, you made sure you saved that strap or whatever you cut off. So at the end of the day, you would count how many bundles you had done. Wow. So you got paid piecework. And so it paid to, if you were fast. But now if you're doing siding, which Dad and I did a lot of siding because we were very good at it. Michael didn't do a lot of siding. My brother Bill, who became apprentice later on, he didn't do a lot of siding. Because they didn't do the pretty nice work.
My dad finish workers, basically.
Yes, yeah. My dad and I, when you looked at a shingle wall, it was pretty. It was nice and straight, whatever. Or if there was supposed to be a variegated type thing, it looked nice. It didn't look like it was thrown up there. And even a shingle roof, up on a roof, it's supposed to have straight courses. And shakes, you can go fast in, but it was all piecework. All of that was piecework. You had to, so to make money, you had to kind of move along. And I think at one point, Michael and I, what we did is we worked together, and I would throw the shingles in, and he would, the shakes, and he'd go along with the gun and staple them down. And we were pretty fast doing it that way. And that was when they started allowing us to use a gun. But it used to be, we all hand nailed. And a lot of people don't realize that either. My dad I got a stripper. Do you know what a stripper is?
It depends on if we're in a good podcast, if we're on a clean podcast or not. But Jenna, I've heard this one before, so you get to answer it. Do you know what a stripper is, Jenna?
Is it like one of those? It's like a tool, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's a little tray that you would wear around your neck, and you put your nails in it, and the nails kind of go down into these little grooves. There would be two lines where the nails would come down through the grooves, and you would slide your fingers through, and you could nail. You just go along and nail. You put your finger up through so you keep your stripper, and it was called a stripper. So they didn't allow us to use guns for there was a few years. It took I think when I came back as a journeyman, just after I graduated from college, they started allowing the guns, the power, compressor type thing to be used. And because we used to have to hand nail comp shingles, the wood shingles, and even the shakes. And then I think they were allowing them first to use those, the power with the shakes, and then gradually they were allowing it for the shingles and the comp shingles, because you have to make sure the power's set so you don't shoot the nail through, and not, there's techniques to making sure you do that correctly. So, but yeah, I had a stripper.
That's so funny. Well, that's so wild to me that you guys used to get paid by the piece. Can you imagine if that's how things were today? It would be wild. People would either be making a lot of money or, I mean, I feel like the amount of expertise that we have nowadays is not like it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, we just don't have that. The shortage and everything, we're having to hire people who've never even been in construction or touched a tool before. And so that'd be wild.
Well, and the other thing a lot of people didn't realize, a lot of these companies, and even when I became an inspector, it was still going on. A lot of companies had two companies. They had a union company and a non-union company. So there, and sometimes I would see at job sites, especially as I was an inspector, crossover of some of these guys working on both crews, even though one crew was a union crew and one was a non-union and under a different name, even though it was owned by the same company. And I had several roofing companies down in the Palm Springs area that had two companies, a union company and a non-union company. Now those kind of disappeared at some point. I would say by the mid 80s, you didn't see that anymore. It was just one company. Now, were they union? I have no idea. I don't know what happened to the unions. I know for a while there, some of the unions kind of closed up shop just about. And I know my dad had some trouble getting his retirement stuff and whatever because of what happened with the Carpenters Union in San Diego at some point. So that was interesting to see too, that you had these different groups, union, non-union, out on the job sites. But just another.
Do you think your experience with like being a roofer helped you immensely when you went to the inspector side? Like you understood things a lot more than probably a lot of other inspectors. You probably were running circles around some of them already.
Well, just like they didn't used to have a specialized like roofing inspector. What was going on there in the desert, because the heat is so harsh on the roofs. They were having a lot of fly-by-night type things going on down there. And so that's why they were looking for somebody with roofing expertise or at least experience. And that's how I got the job. Now, did I see a lot of the type of stuff that I had personally done? Wood shingles and shakes? Not in the desert. Mm-hmm. But the basic principle of how to do a roof, be it a composition shingle, or I'd never seen a urethane foam roof. Never in my life. I thought, what in the world is this? And I was lucky enough. There were a couple companies I didn't trust. And then there was one company that really, really, they were so proud of their product. They taught me so much about urethane foam roofs. And I would ask questions. And they even gave me the tools to really understand what a urethane roof should look like, how much coating, how to test to make sure there was enough coating. They even gave me a microscopic type thing, and I'd make my little cut and I'd be able to measure if they put enough coating down. And there were a few companies that they weren't real happy when I told them, nope, you've got to go back and put another layer of coating down. They didn't have enough coating down, mm-hmm. Per the specs. And so, and then hot mop roofing. I mean, I'd seen hot mop roofing going on. I'd never done a hot mop roof, but I'd seen plenty of them go on. And it's the general idea of how you're supposed to tie in roof to vents or equipment that's up on the roof or along the edges of a building and stuff. All are the same, no matter what type of roof you're putting down. So, but I found that one way of connecting with the people out there, the guys that were out there, especially the guys that are actually doing the work, I asked questions. Mm-hmm. I would go, now what are you going to do right over here where this is going to meet up against this wall? how are you going to make sure this is watertight, you know? And so I learned to ask questions, and that's how I learned to gain some respect from these guys. And at the same time, I was learning these other processes that were going on out in the field. And I did that not only and roofers used to be, they would say the roofers are the toughest crowd. And there were some pretty tough groups out there. There was, I'll never forget this one roofing company. What were they called? Diamond Roofing. And all the guys had a diamond. And some of them were Hells Angels. And you know, from a biker group type thing, and had their own, they were, you know, so I learned a lot from the roofing industry, which made it easier to deal with some of the guys that once I started doing block walls and swimming pools, and then actually doing home inspections and remodels, and then dealing with architects and engineers. And I think I learned a lot in my early days from trying to gain respect, trying to ask questions so that they would bring me in, you might say, you know, pull them in a little bit. And I think that helped.
Yeah. Did you have any times where you felt like you had to completely stick up for yourself as a woman? Like, was there any specific time you can remember where you had to completely stick up for yourself?
Yes. Yeah, and this was a job that was it was a job for a block wall, and they were from out of town. They weren't even one of our regular contractors that do block walls. And old guy, and he had a full crew out there, and they're going like laying down this steel and whatever for the block wall, and they had it in the wrong. I started measuring, and they weren't where they needed to be, and this man just went off on me. And he was an older gentleman, and he went off on me. He wanted me off the job site. He, you know, and I mean, he got in my face, and I could tell his crew was kind of like, they didn't know what to do. And I was like, this man, I thought he was going to hit me. So I've learned to take myself out of a situation like that. I put myself in my vehicle. I wrote out the correction. He had gone back behind somewhere, and I came back and I handed the correction to the gentleman that was supposedly somewhat in charge. And I said, I'm going to go to the office if you need me back, but until you get this whatever done, you can't pour. And I knew they had a concrete truck coming. And so we got a call, and this time my boss, the building official, he goes, I'm going out with you. And he made that guy apologize. I mean, he goes, you know, she's just doing her job. And they did. They moved the block wall, the footings and the steel where it needed to be. But that was one that has always stuck out to me, because I thought the man was going to hit me. I really did. And maybe if I had been a man, he might have hit me. Mm-hmm. Maybe because I was a woman, he didn't.
True.
So who knows? But I learned to, if I got into a situation that I saw that might be really bad, I learned to just take myself out of the situation and come back. You know, I think that's the one that stands out the most.
Wow.
Out of all the years.
I was going to say, you also had somebody that that was supporting you from above also.
Yes.
Like you're taking yourself out of that situation, but you
Yes.
knew that you could go back and bring that person with you, and that
Yes.
person's going to support you fully. So having that people around you that can support you is a big deal within the company or whatever job you have, right?
Yes. And I had some great supervisors over the years. And I mean, my first few supervisors were major old school. I mean, major old school guys. But you know what? Once they found out I kind of knew what I was doing when it came to doing the roofing inspections, and I wasn't afraid to do it, that's when they started allowing me to learn some other things, and they respected what I was doing, and they stood by me. And if there was a problem, I knew I could go to any of them and get that backup if needed. So I was lucky in that I had that. I mean, the building official that hired me originally, he was great. I mean, I had applied. The fire department had a position open, which was like a fire marshal, but under the building department type thing, where you're going to be working with the building department a lot more, but it was under the fire department. I was just found out I was pregnant with Kelley, and he knew I was going for this interview for this job. He goes, "Don't you let them know you're pregnant." He told me that. He goes, "And if they ask you anything like that, don't answer, because they're not supposed to even ask those questions." So I went to this interview, and would you believe they asked me questions that they did not ask any man? And they didn't have anybody there from human resources, which they were supposed to. I went back to the office to the building official, and he asked me how things went, and I told him. He goes, "That's wrong." He filed a complaint.
Wow.
He actually filed a complaint, and they had me write up what was asked and everything. And because there was things, do you plan on getting married? Do you plan on having children? See, you don't do that.
No.
You don't. Are you asking a man these questions?
Correct.
So I
hold on, wait 1 second. So I grew up in this department. I didn't know this, so now you're gonna make me cry because I grew up with these guys. I would be like, "Oh my gosh!"
But see, I had the people I worked with in the building department were great. All those men were great. I mean, they were, and I learned so much from them.
Would you say it's also in a way that, because I think I've talked about it before, that I feel like I've had to similarly, like you're just going out there, proving yourself beyond what a normal guy would have to do. Do you also think that's somewhat sucks as a woman that you have to do that above and beyond? I mean, more apt that you had to do it, hopefully me less, Jenna less, as the years have gone on and women are more accepted in the industry. But do you also think like that sucks that we had to go above and beyond to prove ourselves in a way?
Yep, I do. And I mean, I had, because of the position I held, I had calls from, I don't know if helping people that went through some women that, Edison, Southern California, Edison. I remember a woman that was working out supposedly as a lineman, and this is going to be in the early 90s. And she ended up filing a claim about, harassment, and so they decided they'd help her find a new job. And so they wanted her to talk to me about what a building inspector position was like. And I basically told her, this is a man's world. And it sucks, as you have said, that, we have to prove ourselves more than the other guy that comes, the man that comes in. And I think I still see it. Well, I know I still see it with you guys here and there. I mean, I know Kelley has called me a few times over the years, especially once she got out into the job force. And I just go, I know it sucks. You gotta prove yourself to some of these people. And it's great when you have some good people behind you that back you up. And I know Kelley was lucky in one of her first guys that she worked with out of Las Vegas. He seemed like he was one of those guys. So that was, and I think you still talk with him. That's, and that's
still
great.
Talk.
Yep. So, but it does, you would think by this day and age, especially with all the things that have gone on with equal pay, more of the women's rights type thing that have come about, that you don't have to prove yourself more than the guy, but it's still there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I see a lot more women in construction now, but nothing like what I went through and stuff. I mean, even when I would go to all the, like I said, I kept up my education and went to all different things that were put on by the International Conference of Building Officials throughout the years, and schooling and stuff. And whenever I went to any of these classes where I traveled to and stuff, the classes were 99% men.
Mm-hmm.
You would have occasional women in there. Most of them were maybe an architect or something of the sort like that, or support staff from the office. A lot more were coming in as permit technicians. So you were seeing more of that, but not very many in the building trades. Even as I got some of my certifications for special inspections, and I did those my latter years to maybe get ready for retirement. I thought I would do some special inspection type things once I retired. And I got my special inspector for concrete testing. And even going to that, and even for my renewals over the last few years, there weren't any women still. And so you would think over the years you'd see more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know it's increasing for sure. It's just it's interesting though. I'd be curious to know what the statistics are of like what portions of construction it's increasing the most.
Yeah.
Is it project management? Is it general contractors versus subcontractors? Is it, do you see more women, as inspectors? Do you see more women as engineers? Obviously, we know architects and interior designers are more, female dominated. I guess that all being said, did you love your career?
Oh yeah, I loved it. I did. I really did. I enjoyed it. Even though I had my degree in recreation management, I never had a paid position in recreation management. But I must say my education helped me with what I end up doing. And I really love doing building inspections. Because it was different. It was always different. And so you were always going to different job sites, dealing with different people, seeing different things. And I always felt the pride of, even though I wasn't the contractor that did that work, that was my building. I took ownership in that building. That was my building. And I'll never forget one morning I come to work and they go, Becky, your new hangar just fell down. I went, what? And that was at the Palm Springs airport. And they had been framing up one of the, and this is still framing. They were putting up the major framework up, and they had not put diagonal straps on yet to just anchor things. Well, we are known for getting some crazy winds sometimes. Well, some crazy winds came in, and you would not believe what happened. It was like, but it was my building. They go, Becky, your hangar building fell down. It was my hangar building. I went, what? I go out there, and here's these steel beams, posts, just bent at, and even where the anchors were, they popped. The plate actually popped over the bolt and the nuts.
Wow.
And I mean, we're talking huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was my building. My building fell down.
It's really interesting because, I mean, Jenna, we've talked about like the ownership of like the guys out in the field, or maybe more or less between the two of us. But I feel like this is the first time that you're hearing it from like the inspector side of like, that's my building.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about creating a team on site. And I know from the general contractor side, making that relationship, and even with the trades, making a relationship with the inspector is important. But I don't think, and this is bad on me since you were a building inspector, Mom, that I didn't think like, oh, that the building is that inspectors too. Like they may be taking ownership in it also. So rethinking like why they're coming out, like being like, well, asking all these questions, what's going on? Like they want to make sure it gets built and it's done correctly also. It's really weird that I just thought about that now after you said that, Mom. I think it's a great perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone should take ownerships of all the buildings that they're touched. Like, even if you're just a supplier, you're not just a supplier. See, I'm saying that like that. You are a supplier, right? Even if you go on the job site to, deliver the porta potties, like you are contributing so heavily to this job site to make sure it's successful. And I think if everyone went in with that perspective of taking ownership, that would be, I think we would have better buildings. I think we would have better relationships. I think we would have people with more pride, and be more excited to go to work and have that perspective versus, oh, this is the general contractor's job site, I better mind my P's and Q's, like, so, I think that's a really good perspective for sure.
Yeah, it
is. And the thing is, there were, I know you guys talked about pre-meetings with the architects or the different subs and stuff like that. Even as an inspector, we had pre-meetings on sometimes in our office before a job even broke ground, and we would ask for a list of who's going to be on the job site, be it what subs. But we also had a lot of jobs that we had to deal with special inspectors. And within the code, the contractor a lot of times has to hire a special inspector to come out and look at certain things that we don't certify as correct, but we also look at them. We come back behind the special inspector and make sure. And, believe it or not, there was a couple times on, when you do a slab on grade type of building that gets in tilt up and type stuff, I did a lot of those type of things there in Palm Springs also. And a lot of times, you're looking at these grids and you're going, well, this is not right. How did this special inspector, already say? And a lot of times they were out there at the same time, and I'm going, I'd ask him over. I go, wait a minute, is this right? And he goes, no, you're right. It's not. And it was, so it's kind of like you do have these work together, be it the subs, the special inspector, the regular inspector, and we just want things to be built the way the plans show them on and per the code. We don't want shortcuts that don't meet code. So,
But don't call a building inspector if you have a code class and you're trying to figure out what the freak the code book's saying, because she's really bad at explaining it because she explains it just like the code book. Taking that from that is a personal story.
I kept code books. I don't have any code books in the house anymore.
You just all in your head now.
No, they're not.
No.
they've changed. Well, they change all the
Yeah.
time.
That's true.
That's the other thing. The codes always change. And so it's like, and that's why there's always continued education. But I always enjoyed getting to, once you got to know contractors and especially in our area, because it was a smaller area, you dealt with the same people a lot. And so you knew what to expect from each other. They knew what to expect from us, and we knew what to expect from them. And then there was others that, you really had to watch, and because
they were on the naughty list.
well, I'm not going to say naughty list. There's just some people that we have to have a permit for this. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you were gonna say to the people listening, if they were like something you'd tell them about an inspector, or like something they can do to build that relationship with the inspectors coming out on the project, what would you say from your experience?
I would say, if you're getting ready to start a job somewhere, you want to find out who your inspector is going to be, because a lot of times, depending on the location, the size of a job, you may have just one inspector that does it all. But then there are some jobs that you'll have, and in some places they'll have an inspector that only deals with electrical, an inspector that only does, footings, slab, whatever, commercial. Or you may have an inspector that only does residential. I find out, first of all, who's going to be my inspector, or am I going to have a series of inspectors? I know with Palm Springs, what we did is we assigned areas for our inspectors. So you knew who your inspector was in an area of town. Now, we did have special projects, and usually we would assign an inspector for our special projects. And at Palm Springs, all of our inspectors they basically did everything. So from the ground up to the final. So you inspected everything: electrical, plumbing, sewer, HVAC, roof, framing, you name it. We did the whole thing. So, but that would be I would suggest that they find out who their inspector is going to be. That would be find out, have a meeting, get an idea of what they expect, what kind of time scale do they, what does the department require when you call for inspections, time frame, what works, what doesn't, do I need to be out there every day? Because there are some jobs that, like a tract of homes or a big, the big warehouse building that's, or like a Walmart, or, those type of buildings. Do you need me on site every day? There was many times I did not have to be out every day, but if I had time, I would stop by jobs just to see how things were going. Just to see how things were going. I would go into the office, let them know I'm here. Is there anything you need? If not, I'm just going to walk around and see how things, take a look. And if I saw something that I went, oh no, why are they doing that? What was it? I was in my Home Depot building. The sprinkler guys or not the sprinkler guys, the plumbers were laying pipe over the top of the sprinklers, and for the fire sprinklers, and going, no, you can't do that, and I caught that before it got bad. But so it's, if you can try and give the contractor a heads up on a few things, if you see things or whatever, and not in a not necessarily a oh, I don't know how to say it. I'm not
a red tag way.
Yeah, there you go.
Not a red tag way of like, I just saw this, I'm gonna red tag you, you need to stop work. It's more or less like a partnership. Like,
Yes,
hey, I
there
just
you
saw
go.
there's an issue out here.
Yes.
You're gonna need to get that fixed. So you're
Yes.
creating a relationship. That's interesting because I don't think I've ever seen an inspector come out on site, and Jenna, I don't know about you, to just like check in on the job. So I don't even know, like, depending on the area, how available that is. But that's a relationship that if you can create, that would be super helpful.
See, and I thought it was. To me, that was very important to create that relationship. And I would always check in if there was some place to check in. I always checked in and let them know I was on site. And also if they had a special inspector, because a lot of your block structures have to have a special inspector on site as they do lifts and stuff like that. And I would look at his records, and I wasn't there for my own inspections because I didn't need to be there, but I would look at his records to make sure they were being, they were in place and going on. And if I could find him on site, I'd go and ask, hey, can I come up and take a look? And, I'd go up 3 stories of scaffolding and walk along these planks with him, and just to see what was going on. Because that was all part of building that relationship with the contractor and the special inspector that's on site, and showing the crew that I'm not afraid to do this stuff, getting up on a scissor lift and making me hop onto the scaffolding so I could see what was going on. I mean, that was just part of being an inspector, and building that relationship out there of trust, and like you said, a partnership.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kelley, I don't know if you have any other questions. I have one really good last question I was gonna ask.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
So, what is one piece of advice that you would tell all of the women in construction that you wish that you had when you were in the industry?
Oh my gosh.
She said it was really good. I didn't even know what was coming.
Wow. One piece of good advice. Find a mentor, and they help you believe in yourself and that you can do this and move forward into this field. I mean, because the opportunities, there's so many opportunities. And I think one of the things I'm seeing now, I know our local junior college here up in the high desert, they're starting some trade type stuff at the school, like apprenticeship programs in the trades. So it's kind of like, it's been missing for quite a few years. So it would be interesting to see how many women maybe have signed up for some of those classes. Yeah. And I'm sure they've got some good mentors within those programs.
Definitely. All right. Well, Becky, I respect you so much. This has been like such a cool conversation. Just so everyone knows, this is my first time hearing all of these stories and talking to Becky. So, I mean,
I don't know some of these. I didn't know all of these stories. It's not like she sits and gives me all of these details.
But it's just so cool to hear it from your perspective, and to hear, because I personally don't know anyone else who, females who've been in the industry, in the 70s, and what you went through, and how you still loved your career.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing to me. And just that you kept pushing through. And I feel like, there's so many things, there's so many stereotypes that we have as women, especially in the industry. But I feel like there's so many things that we have that are assets. Like, yes, we are different than men, but that's good. It's a good thing. There are so many things that we do so well. Like you were saying, like when you were working with your counterpart who was a little quicker than you, but you were a perfectionist, right? You had that personality, and which was different than a man at that point, who just wanted to get it done quicker. You wanted to get it done right. And I think
Yes.
that's what differentiates, not that men don't want to do things right, but like women sometimes do work smarter, not harder, because we have to. We don't have the, the muscles to do things a certain way. We have to figure out a smarter way to do it so we don't hurt ourselves or whatever. So I think it's just so cool to hear your perspective and hear your story. So thank you so much for
Great.
coming on here and talking to us. This has been,
Well, thank you for having me.
of course.